Hi, I'm Dara, and today we're going to be making a simple Easter card featuring Distress Oxide inks and a few other supplies. So let's get started. First, you'll see that I'm going to be starting with a card base made from Nina Solar White. This is the 110 pound, and it's cut down to the card base A2 size, which is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches. And then I'm just taking some Distress Oxide inks and sponging those across the front of the cardstock. You'll see that I'm just kind of randomly putting a little bit of the pink, which is called Worn Lipstick, and then I'm going back in and blending that with fossilized amber. I'm just blending those together randomly all over the card, and you'll see that they'll kind of create an orangey corally color. And then we'll be adding some more details in just a few minutes. If you're not familiar with Distress Oxides, they kind of have a really cool property about them in the fact that when you mix it with water, a little chemical reaction kind of happens, and it will change the color. So again, you'll see that here in just a few minutes. We're actually going to be using a stencil and spraying it with water to create a design without actually adding any other ink to it, which is really cool. So I'm just putting the caps back on my inks, as you can see, and then here's the stencil I'm using today. It's by Tailored Expressions, and it's called Here Comes the Sun. So I'm just spraying that with an ink bottle of water. I'm using the Distress spray bottle that you can get from Tim Holtz. It's not necessarily have to be that brand, but that's I prefer to use. And then once you place the stencil in place, I'll go back over that with the paper towel and soak up the extra water. And as you can see, there's been a reaction from the water hitting that Distress Oxide ink. So we have our sunbeams, or rays. And then I'll just add a little more spritz in there to give it a little more dimension. It's more of a splattery look, and you'll see that again here in just a few minutes. So I set that up over to the side to let it dry, and I'm going to cut our cross out with the Big Shot while we let that dry. This is the Third Day Border die by Tailored Expressions. So I'm just using another piece of Nina White cardstock and running that through with my magnetic plate and our regular cutting blades that the Big Shot comes with. Once I've done that, we will just pop it out. You can save that top piece for another card. So we'll just put that to the side. And now that we have that cut out, I'm going to do a little bit of embossing. So I'm taking the embossing buddy and just run that across to get rid of a little static cling that helps the embossing powder not cling to anything other than our ink that we're about to stamp. I'm using Versamark, which is a watermark ink, and you won't be able to see it on the white because it is a watermark. So it'll be like magic once we add our embossing powder. So now I'm just going to take a scrap piece of paper I had lying around. I'm going to use some gold embossing powder, and I'm just pouring that over it, just all over. And now I'm going to just let it fall into the scrap paper and kind of tap the cardstock a little just to make sure to get rid of any loose powder that may be sticking to our card. We'll do like you do with glitter and pour it back into our container and move that over to the side. Now I'm going to turn on the heat gun and let it work its magic. So you'll see after a few seconds that it'll start to get melting and shiny, and that means that it has done its job and our embossing is complete. Now I'm just kind of playing around to see exactly how I want it to be placed on the card. And I'm going to add some embellishments. These are clear iridescent mix jewels from the Little Things from Lucy's cards. They're a really fun embellishment, so I'm just kind of going to lay them all over the card and figure out how I want to place them. once I've finished doing that, I'm going to go back in. I used some glue by Gina K Designs, and I'm also using a quick stick that has some putty in it, so it will make it easy to pick up the small embellishments and add just a drop of glue underneath. So you'll see me doing that here in just a second. It just makes it a lot easier than trying to pick it up with your fingers, and it's just a really great tool to use. So I highly recommend it. So once all of those have been adhered to the card, I'm going to go ahead and put those extra tools away. And then I'm going to add some dimensions to the back, or dimensionals rather, to the back of that white cardstock piece. This will give it a little bit more dimension, and it's a fun, easy way to adhere it to the card base. Once I've added dimensionals, I'm also going back in with mini dimensionals because they're a little bit smaller and easier to use with the small image in the cross area. And as you can see, even the small ones sometimes are a little too large for some areas, so you have to go back through and cut. So once I've done that, we'll go back through and remove the backing, and then we'll just adhere that to the card base. And once I did this, I realized that I wanted to make it pop up just a little more. And so I've decided I would add it to a different color card base. So to do that, I'm using Crumb Cake cardstock by Stampin' Up. And I'm just scoring that at 4 1/4. The cardstock, of course, is cut to 5 1/2 by 8 1/2 to create our A2 size card. And then I realized that I needed to cut it down because I had originally planned to make the piece that we started with the actual card front, and so I just needed to trim that down a little. So I did that, and now I'm just adding a piece of craft foam with a little bit of the Gina K glue. This will give it a nice dimension, and because it's craft foam across the back, it will give it a nice even dimension. So when it goes through the mail, it won't get lumpy in little areas. Adding a little more glue to the back of that, and then I'll adhere it to the card base. So once we've done that, the card is complete. It's super cute, very simple. I hope you enjoyed watching this, and let me know if you have any questions, and I'll be back with another video soon. Thanks guys, bye.